if I'm going with you, I know we'll get to the other side. Sinking in, I know this feels right. Catching a crazy love, moving through me like wildfire.
Hey guys, welcome to a new vlog for me. This week we are going to be doing Summerween. We are having a little bit of Halloween vibes in summer, if you will, because Halloween is my favorite holiday. That's hard to say, but right now we're saying it's my favorite holiday. Let's see which books I am going to be reading this week. I am still reading Bret Easton Ellis and the Other Dogs by Lena Wolf. We're going to read another line on here. Each is named after a famous male writer, Dante, Chaucer, Bret Easton Ellis. I'm going to tell y'all, I'm not much into it. None of what is said on the back of the book has happened yet. I'm like, did they put the wrong blurb? I don't know. Yes, I am still reading Misery by Stephen King. This book has low-key put me into a reading slump. I hope to finish it today. We're still reading it. We're still reading it. This is about an author, Paul Sheldon, who he's in a terrible accident, gets kidnapped by a retired nurse who is threatening him to write his best book ever because he killed off her favorite character. And Annie, the nurse, she's not too happy about that. The mood read that I'm currently doing, so my audiobook, again, that's where I'm at. I should finish this one this week as well. This is The Untold Lives of the Women Killed by Jack the Ripper by Hallie Rubenhold. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. And then my ebook is Texas Rich by Fern Michaels. We will read another paragraph here. Young and pretty Billie Imes naively fell for the exciting pilot Moss Coleman at the Philadelphia Navy Yard during World War II. Within a few months, she was pregnant, married, and traveling across the country to Austin, to the 250,000-acre spread known as Sunbridge, into the tantalizing world of the Texas rich. In a vast land dominated by the industrious Colemans, Billie fights to maintain control of herself and her marriage. And those are the books that we're starting the week with, because I do think I'll finish 2 of the books in this stack, and we will be going to 2 completely new and different books to hopefully get me out of this reading slump. Blinds do not need to be open. I was supposed to close them like 30 minutes ago. If you live somewhere where it's hot, keep your blinds closed because it'll get hot at nighttime when you're trying to sleep. But I have finished Misery by Stephen King. I'm giving this a 3.25, so it will go in as a 3-star into Goodreads. I have my main notes all wrapped up here together. The character work was definitely my favorite part of the book with Paul. I was so immersed into his shoes, feeling how he's feeling, having the thought process being like, yep, that's definitely what I would think if I was him. Just great job at that. And then Annie, it makes so much sense the way she is, like why she's like that. And for somebody to do all the crazy stuff that she's doing, the character work and development just makes so much sense. That parasocial fangirl, she personifies that kind of thing perfectly. With the atmosphere, I didn't feel as claustrophobic as I expected to feel. I do really love claustrophobic thrillers. I didn't get that here. Maybe I don't know. I don't know why I didn't. It was really on the back of the book where it says like her 3 weapons, the needle, axe, and blowtorch. I'm like, okay, well that hasn't happened yet, so I know that's going to happen. So he's not going to die yet. One of my big takeaways from this, go in knowing nothing. Don't read the back of this book. Maybe exit, don't watch last week's vlog. If you plan on reading this book, go in knowing nothing. But I did like the tone. It was comedic and it could take a dark turn at any moment. I personally do really like that. When I was saying it was comedic, some of this stuff is just so insane and crazy to read where it's just laugh out loud because it's like, oh my gosh, what is even happening here, that you have to laugh. Writing style starts out as fever dream-esque. It's very confusing. You're going in and out of consciousness with the character of Paul. So again, you are immersed into his shoes, but it was confusing to read, and I would have to read paragraphs and passages several times over before I could get a full understanding of them. And I'm somebody who just, I don't like that. I don't like to be questioning things. That's just not for me personally, but it's not bad, and it is immersive and does work well with the story. With the plot, I do want to talk about just some of the themes that I do think are present. Addiction. Apparently Stephen King did go through addiction, and I do think this story could be talking about that experience. In this case, it's the character I don't even think was trying to get addicted. It was kind of forced upon him, which that does happen in the real world in a whole different kind of ways that's possible. But I do think this could ultimately be a story of addiction. Then it could be an indirect at parasocial fans. But also I thought today that this could be a whole critique of the creative process at a level of Stephen King. He's a master of literature. Everybody has heard of Stephen King, even if they haven't read his books. You know his characters, the premises of his stories. You know all of that. Everybody has heard of him. He's just such a cornerstone in American pop culture that I'm wondering, because we have Annie who is threatening Paul. She's like, you got to do this. You got to do this. This is what I want to happen in the story. It's not going to be good if you do it this way. Could this be a critique of when you are at that level of success? It feels so overbearing of, oh my gosh, is my next book going to be good enough? Are people going to want to read my next book? Are they going to like my next book? Is all of this going to be over for me? Is my career over instead of life in this book? You have all these questions and just all that burden of fame and success put onto your shoulders. I think this book could be depicting that. Or maybe I am just looking too deeply into it. With the intrigue, this did go in circles, and it does make sense because we have Paul who is kind of trapped on this homestead and trying to break out and just having to go through it in all these different ways. That was just tedious to read over and over, and that was ultimately why I had issue with this book. It felt slow, never ending. It's not even that long. Compared to some of his other books. This is an average length book at about 400 pages, but it just went on and on and on for me, that it never felt like it was going to end, but it did everything that a horror book is supposed to do. It made me cringe, it made me gasp and had my jaw on the floor. It did all the things that this kind of book is supposed to do, and as I said before, go in knowing nothing. Let's talk about the logic, because I also do think there is some stuff here. You are going to have to suspend your disbelief, because what are the odds that Annie, who is his self-proclaimed biggest fan, finds Paul at the side of the road after a car accident? I feel like there has to be a little bit more there, because again, just what are the odds? We have this huge country. This is taking place in the 1980s. There's not phones where like somebody has their Instagram story with their location and all that kind of thing. It's just such a coincidence that his biggest fan happens to find him at the side of the road. So you are going to have to suspend your disbelief, and I do think there might be a little more to the story than meets the eye. So this wasn't bad, but I do think the book needed to be diced down, and I would have enjoyed it more if it was shorter, because I do think the character work was really good. I'm kind of curious what it would be like if we got Annie's perspective, but it was just very long-winded, going in circles, start out very confusing, but there is good immersive character work, and with that rhinestone, everything, you do get really immersed into the story, but it's tedious and felt like it was never ending. So this was a good book. If you still want to read this, like if this is a book you want to read, still give it a go, because it is kind of a modern classic. It's Stephen King, very popular author, and I've seen a lot of people who love this book. It just wasn't for me personally. Like, it's not bad, but it's not my favorite thing that I've read, and not my favorite that I've read from Stephen King. It's now time to talk about the next book that I'll be starting. It is a horror book to keep up the Summerween vibes, and it is Slewfoot, A Tale of Bewitchery by Brom. Oh, I love this cover. I got this in Brunswick, Georgia a few years ago on my birthday trip. Let's see what it is about. Set in colonial New England, Slewfoot is a tale of magic and mystery, of triumph and terror from acclaimed author and artist Brom. An ancient spirit awakens in a dark wood. The wild folk call him father, slayer, protector. The colonists call him Slewfoot, demon, devil. To Abatha, a recently widowed outcast, alone and vulnerable in her pious village, he is the only one she can turn to for help. Together they ignite a battle between pagan and Puritan, one that threatens to destroy the entire village, leaving nothing but ashes and bloodshed in its wake. Let me tell y'all why I find this to be intriguing. Bewitchery. I love witchy books. That's right up my alley. I also love the Puritan New England setting, which goes hand in hand with bewitchery, because a lot of people think of the Salem witch trials, rightfully so. They go hand in hand. This one is also giving me folk horror vibes, which for horror, folk horror is my preference, but for something is telling me this is cosmic as well. I don't know if it's actually going to be, or if I'm just in that Stephen King mindset still, but I think there might be something a little cosmic here. But definitely folk horror just by the cover and everything. And this does have illustrations as well. I will be following along with the audiobook as I read this one also. I love just that flop. And this just seems so big for a paperback. Face comparison, hand comparison. That is what I am starting today. It is time for the nightly update on Slewfoot. I only read one chapter, which was 33 pages, getting me to 10% of the way into the book, so I only have 2 notes. The first one, right off the bat, the atmosphere, so good, and it's exactly what I'm wanting. Like, think of the entrance, or the first scene, to Hocus Pocus, being in like the 1600s in New England. It's folk, New England, historical, spot on. That is exactly the kind of atmosphere that I want. Kind of reminds me of Lefana, which I picture that taking place in the Balkans, but similar small town village. This is in, I think, Connecticut. It's called Sudden, but they talk about Hartford. I think Hartford and New Haven, which are in Connecticut, so I'm assuming we are in Connecticut in this book. But I'm scared about our girl, Abatha. I'm scared that she's going to be a Mary Sue, because we are in a very strict Puritan society. The Puritans, at least for this book, do not even believe in churches, because they think that's just too, what is the word, like, not haughty, just too, like, in your face, that it's dishonoring God by showing off your money, which I kind of agree with, because during COVID, all these churches and all were doing like renovations, and I'm like, people are out here struggling, but y'all are doing all that. Like, do you really need to be doing that right now? Besides the point, she's in this Puritan society. She's very different. She is essentially like a mail order bride. She was born in London, and there was a program for the colonists in America to send your daughter, send a woman in your life over there to America to marry one of the colonizers, one of the colonial people, one of the Puritan people. And that is what happens to Abatha. Her father sells her off to America, and she marries Edward, who he's been a good guy to her, but he is very, like, he is very religious, so he doesn't want to touch her too much or whatever, and she just wants to feel desired. But they are having issues because Edward's brother, Wallace, he's in a lot of debt. The land that Edward and Abatha live on technically belongs to Wallace, so he's going to be like, I'm going to sell your land so I can get some money. Not caring that his brother and sister-in-law live there. And that's their big drama right now is, oh my gosh, what's going to happen to our house? And they also just lost their goat Samson. Samson is missing, and they need the goat for breeding, and therefore they can sell the baby goats. Therefore, you have to have money there to make a living in this colonial time period. But Abatha she wasn't born a Puritan like the other women in the village. She talks when she's not supposed to. She can't bite her tongue is basically what her big issue is. Or maybe she, they wear the caps, the bonnets, so her hair, maybe like one little piece will fall out. That gets her in trouble because you're not supposed to bring attention to yourself. So I'm scared that she is like, I'm not like other girls. I'm so different than all the Puritans here. I'm better than them because I am just I don't have the same beliefs as them. I'm scared it's going to be like that, but we're only 10% of the way into the book. We will have to see where Slewfoot and the character of Abatha take us. It is Tuesday, and I am exactly a third of the way into Slewfoot. Also, I didn't know Slewfoot meant, like, the devil. I didn't know that, and I'm like, all the religious people on Facebook are probably freaking out. So let's talk about my notes. Starting on chapter 2, and I read, it was like 70 something page, no, maybe like 68 pages, I don't remember exactly, but I got to page 101, which is chapter 5, but I started the day on chapter 2, and I think the character of Edward might be on the spectrum, just with his social cues and things, but also it could just be because of the society he has grown up in. That's been a big thing today. I totally forgot that Edmund dies, because on the back of the book we do find out this is about Abatha, who is a recently widowed woman. So I was not expecting him to die, but we are seeing how Abatha is to survive in this very constricted society of just all these religious ideals that these people have. Why she doesn't just leave and go to Hartford or New Haven, it's because she's stubborn. We'll get to that. Super curious of why there is this big divide between Edward and Wallace, the two brothers. It seems like it's because of Abatha that she came between the two of them. She was not born in their little village. She wasn't born a Puritan. She came from London. So I'm thinking that it might just be because she's not religious and didn't come from a religious upbringing, and that might just be why there is that kind of feud going between the two brothers. But seeing the scenes of Abatha and Edward were so wholesome and sweet of how he treats her, and then we get the dread. I'm like, something bad is going to happen. We had all those wholesome scenes, and now the author Brom is going to try to tear our hearts out. I definitely was not expecting it. It was very reminiscent of Pennywise and the Drain being like, or it's not Pennywise when they're all like, we all float down here, you know, like they're floating down there. That's basically what's happening. And so if you do like that kind of thing, creepy in the gutter, pulling Georgie into the gutter, that vibe, you might like some of our creepy stuff that's happening here. I don't want to say monster. I'm not exactly sure what we're dealing with yet, because I think it's kind of like I also thought of the Mind Flayer in Stranger Things, where it feels like it's an army being made of woodland creatures mixed with people. You can kind of see how she has the hoof legs and then human body. We kind of had that vibe going on, and there are illustrations, but I haven't got to that part in the book yet, so I don't want to look at them yet to see exactly how Brom is imagining these characters, these creatures look. We get to the end of the chapter of Abatha finding out that she is now a widow, and obviously at this time, a woman having her own farmstead, homestead, isn't really, it's not normal. So obviously, everybody is trying to take advantage of her, mainly Wallace, her brother-in-law, because he wants to sell that land so he can get out of debt. But Abatha is very stubborn, and she's like, I don't think that's, or she knows that's not Edward would have wanted. Edward wanted to keep this land. I want to do what my husband wanted for me. So the reverend of the town, Reverend Carter, he's like, that's her right, being his widow, that she can do this in honor of him. So Wallace is going to all the big cities, and he's trying to get help in this legal battle to... He thinks it's kind, being like, Abatha, you can come to my house and be a servant, but I really need to sell your farmland. Abatha is stubborn, and she knows that she's making things hard for herself, so she is self-aware in that matter. We kind of talked about it yesterday. I was scared she might be a Mary Sue, and she's not the only, like, good person here. We have come across other characters who are being kind to her, and it's not like it's a whole dog-eat-dogs world where everybody's just out to get her, which is so annoying, reading about that kind of thing. So we have had progress in that front. Another pop culture reference, if you like this, you might like this. I have vibes of the Three-Eyed Raven plotline in A Game of Thrones, A Song of Ice and Fire, whichever one you're more familiar with. Very reminiscent of that, of there being that tree and a whole universe underneath or inside of it. But now I'm wondering if all of this, is this real? at the very start, we have this quote right here: "Tread wary foot amongst these sacred stones, for here on October 5th, 1666, the devil Slewfoot did take the lives of 112 good folk of Sutton village. May God save their immortal souls." Marker mounted upon ruined stonework of the old Sutton meeting house. And I'm like, did all the people that were slaughtered become these creatures that are like minions to Satan? I don't know, but then I am just seeing this, that we did start out in March 1666, so we have not got there. We are at the early part of summer in the book, which is what we are dealing with in the real world at the moment as well. But there are all sorts of things that I love, and I did take a picture of one instance today. The site, and the site being passed down generation and generation to women in Abatha's family. I eat that up. That's one of my things. We had charms and blessings, which you often do see in these historical, really this time period, 1600s, 1700s. I can think of on Outlander, like Leary was doing all sorts of stuff trying to get rid of Claire, doing all sorts of charms and things. And there's satanic panic, obviously, all the way back then. And those are all of my thoughts and my update of what is happening in Slewfoot. I just finished The 5 by Hallie Rubenhold. I'm giving this a 3.5 to let you know my rating system for nonfiction's a little bit different than fiction, because there's only 4 categories, that being impact, research, structure, and writing. Just to have a little disclaimer there. Let's talk about the impact. The book itself, I can appreciate what it's doing. It is giving dignity to these women, because a lot of times when we hear Jack the Ripper, it's like, oh, who really was Jack the Ripper? But we never think of, oh, who were his victims and what were their stories? And this is telling us the stories of those women. So I really love that we are throwing the man aside and throwing the killer aside and actually looking at the victims, who were vulnerable women. At the time, it was very, just a lot of snippets to make a legend rather than people getting the full story, because in Victorian times, like, it was really about sensationalizing stories, so let's make it as scandalous as possible. And therefore, these women were remembered as prostitutes, but out of the 5, only 1 was officially labeled a prostitute on her death certificate. And it's apparently, I don't know, because I mean, I don't really hear people talking about Jack the Ripper that much, but that people are like, oh, they were just prostitutes, it doesn't really matter. Again, I've personally never heard anybody say that, but if there's a book about it, people must be saying it, right? But the main thing I took away is the classism of Victorian era England, and my favorite part was just seeing what day-to-day life was like for the average person in Victorian London. I never have heard about that. In books and TV, they're usually about people who are rich, when these were working class women. And that is what I really took away from this book, and why I'm not unhauling it, and why I want to keep it here for reference if I ever do write something in Victorian times. I don't really have a whole lot of inspo to do that, but just to have that as a backbone, I think this would be a great book if you really want to be immersed into Victorian London and working class London. That would be the way to go. Let's talk about the research. Again, these are normal working class women that were murdered. I cannot imagine how you find info on them. When I was reading this, I have a family Bible that is, I think it was from like 1864, something like that, the 1860s. And I'm like, wow, my ancestors were writing in this Bible when the events of Jack the Ripper, when those murders were going on. But what I'm getting at is, it's so hard to find information in America anyway. I don't know about in the UK. It's so hard to find information on normal people who are just going about their day-to-day, trying to survive, trying to keep a roof over their head. It's so hard to find info on. So the links that the author of this book had to go in, oh my gosh, incredible. Going through census records and just newspaper clippings. It's incredible, all the research. But a lot of this, you are just going to have to take the author's word for it, because we truly don't know these women. We only have so little of information on, so it's going to be like, okay, I thought I wrote a note about this where I worded this better, but I'm not seeing it in here. Okay, yeah, the word I was saying was benefit of the doubt. You're gonna have to give the author benefit of the doubt for who these women were as people. Another thing with the research where I'm kind of like, ooh, I don't know how I feel about this. So I did do this as a mood read. Therefore, with my mood reads, audiobooks are my favorite format of reading. So with my mood reads, I do the audiobook. Totally different. A lot of the words and just sentence structures, little things like that, were different from the physical copy to the audio. And then last night when I was reading, months were different, where we say in here that something happened in September, the audiobook says something happened in October. A whole lot can happen in a month, so which one is it? Obviously, if somebody's just reading this physical copy, they're not going to know. If somebody's just listening to the audiobook, they're not going to know these differences. But that has me raise an eyebrow, being like, that's kind of weird to have such drastic differences. I think that's kind of strange. Structure, I do like this, that each woman has her own section. Really, so many of these women could have their own book because their stories are just so... There's just so much to their stories of how they got to that moment in their life that they've been kind of put into legend about. And the writing style is very descriptive, but as I said, it immerses you into Victorian London, but it is dense and it is gonna take you a little while to read. But I do think this is very timely because so many people are still going through situations that these people in Victorian London were going through. A lot of these women were just trying to survive. The common thread here is alcoholism and failed relationships, that a lot of times these women would get a divorce, or try to anyway, and then have to try to survive because this isn't a society where they might have a queen on the throne, but it's hard out there for a woman, and they would have to go work in factories because this is the time of the Industrial Revolution, and just all these steps that you would have to go through to get a divorce or to have custody of your kids. There was so much, and some of these women were trying to do that. They were just trying to survive, but they were vulnerable, and they were a victim of the society and the times they were living in, because mental health and alcoholism, those kind of things, addiction, weren't handled in the way that they are handled today. But as I said, a lot of people can still relate to this. A lot of people are just trying to survive in this world. We're living in Nightcrawling by Layla Motley is a book that I think of, that we see her just trying to take care of her family at the end of the day, and has to do some crazy stuff along the way. Our last woman that we talked about in here was she nobody really knows what her name might have been, but what do they have? Marie Jeanette Kelly was the last name. She was like a high class prostitute. She was the only one that was officially labeled a prostitute, and hearing about how women were trafficked back then and the things that these high class prostitutes were having to do with the Epstein situation and just all this stuff we're seeing nowadays with sex trafficking being so prevalent, it's crazy to think, yeah, that same thing was happening over 100 years ago, like 140 years ago, and it's not very different at all. And that's very scary to think about. But this was ultimately a very melancholic book, a sad book, a devastating book, knowing that these vulnerable women were just taken advantage of. So yes, I would recommend that you guys pick up the 5, but obviously tons of trigger warning. We're going to do a few updates here on Wednesday. The first one is that I have a movie update. Our Summerween movie was Midsommar. Don't know exactly how to say it. I'm not Swedish, not even 0.1%. But I watched that movie. I gave it a 4.5. I loved it. It did take me a little bit to get into. That's why it's not a full 5-star, and I might be an oddball in that because I saw a lot of people on Reddit were saying that's like their favorite movie intro ever. It wasn't that for me, but once we get to the cult stuff, this is how a cult story needs to be. Like, when I am looking for that vibe in books, that is what I want. So many books get compared to this movie, and that's part of the reason I was drawn to it. I talked about the cult stuff, the anthropological stuff as well. I've always been fascinated by anthropology, so seeing that some of our characters are at university to be anthropologists, and that is kind of like why they go on this trip to Sweden to see this people group and see how different cultures practice Midsommar. Perfect week to watch that movie. But when I read Misery last week, I wasn't really fazed by the gore, at least for the like iconic scene in that movie. I wasn't really fazed by it, so I was like, what's wrong with me? But this movie, Midsommar, it's probably some of the worst gore I've ever seen in my life. It was just so... I saw things I never thought I would probably see in my life. I know it's fake because of the movie, but there were just, things that I never ever thought I would see, or ever, even thought about seeing. Crazy stuff. But as I said, I do love the cult aspects, the just anthropological aspects. I know like the relationship depiction is one of the things that people talk about a lot. That was another thing with the characters. They all seem so real, where it's like, yes, I can 100% believe these relationships and dynamics that all these characters are having, where it didn't even feel like I was watching a movie. It just seemed like I was watching real life, even though it did get kind of batshit. Sorry, I don't want to swear, but it was crazy. At the end, I was like, what the F did I just watch? Like, what was that? But it was a great movie. Fantastic. I definitely recommend. But like the 5, do look into trigger warnings, because it is a horror movie. And now I kind of struggle even calling it a horror. But I mean, yeah, it is a horror. But it's kind of like Weird Girl as well. I'm here to talk about Slewfoot now. We have gone to over the halfway point. I'm at 57%. I read 75 pages today, getting me to chapter 9. The first one, I really think a lot of people are going to like Samson, who is that guy on the back. He reminds me of Marcellus and like Remarkably Bright Creatures, those kind of characters. And in Disney movies how there's I think like Cheshire Cat, the guy who can disappear in Monsters Inc. He's given those kind of vibes of just like, he shows up when he wants to show up, and he just has kind of that tone that Marcellus has, because he is this ancient spirit. So he's all-knowing, right? No, he's not really all-knowing, because he's kind of getting to know things as well. I do think a theme here could be nature being encroached on, and that these we have Samson, and then we have his little guys who follow him around, which also remind me of a Disney movie, how there's like sidekicks, and we just have little excerpts of them with their things they're trying to do to cause chaos. But Disney movies always have to have those sidekicks. It does give me Disney movie vibes, but it's not for kids. Don't think this is for kids. Nothing here is like so totally awful that it's not for kids. I just think that it would be scary for kids, because this is an adult book. We're moving on from the age demographic thing. The little sidekick characters, they are little nature, what are they called? The wild folk. And then we have Samson, who they're nature spirits, it seems to be. And we have America being colonized, and they're just getting impressed off of their lands. And we have religion, the Puritans, coming in and kind of wiping out the worship of Mother Earth. And there's this other guy that they talk about that I'm not going to be able to pronounce the name, and I don't know exactly who he is. And sometimes with that kind of stuff, I don't like to say words out loud if I don't know what they mean. But I do think that one of the themes here is nature, and how nature is just being destroyed for houses and whatnot. I'm really curious now, because there are pictures. I can show you Apatha. I'm not going to show you the others. And I'm like, okay, have I misunderstood some things? That's not bad. Did I interpret one thing and it's not actually going to be that? We will just have to see. But another theme here is Abatha just discovering that there's so much more to life than she ever thought. She thought she was going to be stuck in this marriage, that she was sent here because her father needed money. but she's now finding out that she can farm, she can heal, and by heal I mean like medically care for somebody. She can do all of this, that she is so much more than just being that wife, being that young girl who was stuck and doing what everybody else wanted her to do, and now she can do her own thing. She is strong, and it's not really even society that's holding her back, because by law, like, she can do this because she is the widow. But I mean, obviously women should be able to do whatever they want to do, but you know we're talking about the 1600s here. But the end of chapter 8, I'm really like, oh my gosh, she comes to a realization. I'm like, are they saying all religions, all gods, devils, whatever, are they all the same, one and the same thing? I don't know, but that would be an interesting discussion point there. We will, again, I only say we will just have to see how things go. But yeah, I'm enjoying this. It's like in the 3-star category. I'm not loving it as much as I thought I would, but it is a good time. I am going to be starting my next mood read at 9 o'clock. It's 8:23 right now. I was gonna do the minutes, but I'm not. And that is going to be The Compound by Aisling Rawl. I don't read the descriptions of my mood reads. From what I know, this is Love Island meets Lord of the Flies. Like, how those two things come together, I do not know. Like, that sentence just feels like words that shouldn't go together. And then there was a little short blurb on the audiobook, because I will be doing the audiobook. So let me pull that. A blurb for the audiobook says, a reality show where 20 contestants compete to outlast each other in a remote compound until the stakes turn dangerous and survival blurs with strategy. I love this cover. This is going to be my first summer mood read of the year, my first seasonal read of the year. I got this at Book of the Month. It was from, let's see, oh, the quote was from Hannah from Greenville that says, is this spot taken? Yeah, I'm not seeing a month on here, so maybe this was just an add-on book. But the author is lives in Dublin, and Lucy Boynton, I think is how you say her name, is doing the audiobook narration, and she is in one of my favorite movies, Sing Street, and then she's been Bohemian Rhapsody as well, and then she's going to be in A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms playing one of my favorite characters. So like, love her, can't wait to see how she does an audiobook. It is time for the last day of the vlog. I read 56 pages in Slewfoot today, getting me to 76%. And this is honestly giving me 3-star vibes, where I'm not really caring what is happening. I don't think it's bad, but when bad stuff happens to our characters, or really anything happens to our characters, I'm like, okay, that's happening. So it is given 3.25 vibes. I have completed 2 books this week. We gave Misery a 3.25 and The Five a 3.5. So there are books that one I'd recommend with a maybe, and the other, yeah, I would recommend it. I have indeed read over 100 pages every day this week. I am very proud of myself. I have been doing well page-wise this month, even though I haven't read as many books, because I'm not focusing on short books like I have in the other months this year. Let's do our sneak peek for next week's vlog. I'm going to be reading my nonfiction pick, which is How the Word is Passed by Clint Smith. This is showing the impact that slavery has had on modern day America. Once again, this is nonfiction, and I wanted to read it for Nonfiction November last year, I'm pretty sure, but I didn't get around to it. There were too many books and not enough time, so we are going to be reading it in June. And next week's vlog is going to be the reset. We are going to be preparing for a whole new month of reading in July. What does that include? I'm going to make a new spread for my Kindle. I'm going to get my wrap up together, so go through the books that I've read, see which ones I want to keep, see which ones I want to get rid of. We will also be going through books that I bought this month and putting them on my shelves and logging them all into Goodreads and Storygraph. If you guys would like more details, stay tuned for next week. If you made it through this whole video, leave a fruit emoji in the comments below, and as always, comment, rate, and subscribe, and don't forget to ring that notification bell to be notified when all my videos go live. I'll see you in my next one. Bye!